Good evening.
Technical difficulties now fixed. Hello, sir. Are you going to come join us tonight?
When do we ever start an episode without technical difficulties?
I mean, it just might be
It's our thing.
on part.
There it is. Alexa, turn off living room light.
Okay.
There. She's right on cue. Technical difficulties. So good evening, everybody. Hope you've had a good couple of weeks and hope that you had a lovely 4th of July weekend. And diving right back into it now.
Because it's officially Halloween now.
Yes, exactly. So,
For those of you that don't know, those are the rules.
Yep.
July 5th starts Halloween.
Yep.
And it never ends.
Okay, it never ends here at all, but
Yeah, it's 365 all the time.
yes. But yeah, so hope that you all are doing well tonight. And tonight we are going to be taking a little sojourn up north.
To a place we want to go to. We have not been.
We will be going.
Yes, we will. And I want to go longer.
True, but we'll have to.
Yes.
We'll have to deal with the hand that we have been dealt.
Yes. And we will
Such
enjoy
as it is.
the 2 days that we have.
We will enjoy it.
But we are talking about Nova Scotia. Chris and I have never been to Nova Scotia, but for those of you that are not familiar, it's where Halifax is. It's where Peggy's Cove is. It's just off of Prince Edward Island. So if you're a fan of Anne of Green Gables, Anne of Avonlea, that's where that takes place. So I have been fascinated with this area for a very long time.
Yeah. So it's up there. It's got a lot to it. And for reference, now the biggest city is Halifax.
Yes.
We are only going to briefly touch on Halifax tonight because
I found an awful lot of stuff in Halifax, so it's getting its own episode.
2 weeks from now, we're going to be back. We're going to do an episode that's dedicated to the city of Halifax up there in Nova Scotia. So you got to have a lot of Nova Scotia this month.
Yeah, and considering Chris and I are going to be going to Halifax in September, we figured this is also research so that we can get video and go visit some of these haunted places and do our TikTok thing with you guys.
Yes. So we're going to have some fun.
Yeah.
And
Research.
And in the meantime, we hope that you have enjoyed what we have for you this evening. Let's see.
I'm sorry, Nico. No, sir. No. Sir is deciding that he needs to rub his face on the camera.
You know, if you want to get on camera,
Right here.
Right here.
You need to be right here. I saw your tail briefly on camera.
Yeah. But anyway, so yeah, good evening, Patrick. Oh, Ed, thank you. Sharing a nice little link to Nova Scotia there right off the start. But yeah, Nova Scotia, really, it's, it gets overlooked. I mean,
It does.
You got the other Canadian provinces, you got Ontario, you got Quebec, and they really kind of suck the oxygen out of a lot of what people know about Canada, because
That's where everybody knows.
Most of the people live there. You got Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal up through there, and Quebec City. So, yeah, those kind of some of the biggest cities that are there in those two provinces. And there's a whole lot more to Canada,
Especially if you like the seafaring and villages and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and we have
fortresses.
Yep.
There's a lot of fortresses in Nova Scotia.
Mm-hmm. But we have done an entire episode dedicated to Canada before. We did an entire episode dedicated to the city of Toronto before, and also one dedicated to
Vancouver?
not Vancouver, Victoria, British Columbia. So yeah, we have talked about Canada quite a bit to date, and we're going to get another heavy dose of Canada with us this month.
Because Canada is quite haunted.
Yep. And so what we're going to start with here this evening is one of our favorite things to talk about, period. And that is, lighthouses. So, this area has a nice little lighthouse. We're going to talk about Peggy's Cove. It's one of the most popular tourist destinations on the east coast of Canada. It's on the south shore of Nova Scotia, not too far from Halifax, and it boasts stunning views and a picturesque lighthouse, making it the perfect stop for locals and visitors alike to take in the classic Nova Scotia landscape. But behind these treats for the eyes lies something else that Peggy's Cove is known for. Its ghost stories, including their famous Lady in Blue. According to legend, Peggy's Cove was named after the only survivor of a schooner that ran aground and sank in 1800. A young girl by the name of Margaret was taken in by one of the local families. Locals called her Peggy, or Peggy of the Cove, and some say she married a local man and then eventually and settled in the fishing village before eventually moving on to North Dakota. Quite the trade going from...
Yeah, that's quite the difference in landscape.
Yeah, going from the shoreline to one of the most landlocked locations in all of North America. But anyways,
we digress.
We digress.
I think...
So, as for the Lady in Blue, her story is that she had traveled from Europe to Canada hoping for a better life for herself and her 2 children. Unfortunately, she didn't have enough money to bring her children with her, but hoped to earn enough money to eventually bring them to her.
Sorry, that was Nico on the table again, trying to knock over the camera.
Yep. Settling in the village of Peggy's Cove, she married a local man who was very kind to her. One day, she was sitting on the rocks, daydreaming of her children, and was very sad because she missed them so. Her new husband soon joined her, and seeing that she was feeling down, he tried to cheer her up by singing and dancing on the rocks. As he was dancing, he slipped and fell on the rocks, killing him instantly. The locals found him later, but there was no sign of the woman. Some say that she likely felt responsible for his death, and she took her own life by leaping into the sea. To this day, people still see the Lady in Blue. She appears on the jagged shore, poised to jump into the sea, but when someone tries to step in to help, she disappears. The woman seems sadly fated to reliving her final moments over and over again. So while Peggy's Cove is a beautiful place to visit, do play it safe by the shoreline. The rocks and the Atlantic Ocean are unforgiving here, and you do not want to share the same fate as the Lady in Blue.
I think Patrick misses Peggy's Cove.
Yep, looks like a nice little link there to Peggy's Cove. Thank you, Patrick.
Yes, awesome. All right, so we're going to move over to the north of Nova Scotia on the border of New Brunswick, and we have a community of Amhurst and the terrifying story of a young woman who lived there in the 1870s. Her story's mysterious, harrowing ordeal that was well documented, perplexing those who bore witness to it. Over the course of a year, a malevolent, unseen force tormented 18-year-old Esther Cox inside her family home. Following a traumatic, heartbreaking ordeal, Esther began experiencing haunting encounters. The setting was a crowded 2-story cottage occupied by Esther, her sister Olive, and Olive's husband, Daniel Teed. Now, the Teeds' 2 young sons, Willie and George, were also there, and Esther's sister, Janine, and brother, William. Getting a little crowded in this house, by the way. Also, Daniel's brother John was in there as well. Now, Daniel was the foreman of a local shoe factory, and one night Esther screamed, jumped out of bed, saying there was a mouse under the bedclothes. Finding that there wasn't any such mouse, they assumed it must have been a nightmare, and she and Janine went back to sleep again. However, the following night, they saw a pasteboard box filled with fabric patches moving backwards and forwards. But on inspection, they found it empty. The next night, things escalated, with Esther crying out that she was dying. To Janine's horror, Esther's body seemed to have swelled, her face was red, her eyes bulging, and her hair was standing on end. Attracted by the commotion, the rest of the family rushed to be met by loud booms that shook the house, while Esther's body returned to normal. Incidents that followed at a furious pace. Bedclothes were moved, pillows flew about, Esther experienced the swelling and twitching of her limbs. Her skin became red hot. She was attacked by needles and pins, was stabbed, cut, slapped, and scratched. Rumblings and bangings were heard around the house, and on several occasions, a bucket of cold water in the kitchen table bubbled like boiling water, though it remained cool to the touch. Some events occurred when Esther was not in proximity, such as the occasion when the 3 men entered the cellar. One received a blow to the forehead. Eventually, the householders found that they were able to communicate with the entity by asking questions and receiving knocks in response. One evening, as they watched Esther, family members heard a scratching sound coming from the, scratching sound, and saw the words, "Esther Cox, you're mine to kill," in large letters scored in the plaster.
That's kind of intimidating.
It's very intimidating.
You're mine to kill.
I'm sorry, I don't want to be anything's plaything.
No.
Definitely not anything's dead plaything. All right, so Esther claimed that the entity was threatening to burn the house down. The family did not take the threat seriously until lighted matches began appearing and falling into Esther's bed. Another time, one of Esther's dresses was rolled up, stuffed under her bed, and set on fire. Naturally, there was a suspicion that Esther, rather than the pyromaniacal ghost, was the arsonist, especially when the fires became more serious. On one occasion, a fire in a bucket of cedar shavings in the basement nearly blazed out of control. Not surprisingly, the goings-on attracted crowds of gawkers to the extent that the police had to restore order. Esther received the widespread coverage in the local and regional newspapers, becoming a celebrity. Public opinion on the matter was mixed. Some thought there must be a natural explanation, such as stray electrical charges. You want to weigh in on that one? Others, this was the 1870s.
Yeah, electricity was still very new to a lot of people, and, wiring wasn't what it was today. So, stray electrical charges?
Plausible,
but I also think that it was a very convenient boogeyman as well, considering it wasn't but just so well understood.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Plausible, but.
Big but.
Lost my spot. There we go. Others thought that Esther was producing the events and that she should be put away in her place to bring swift resolution. Given the chaos centered around Esther, she was occasionally sent away, which gave the family a temporary relief. Eventually, the landlord stepped in, concerned that his house would be destroyed, and he told the Teeds that Esther had to leave. She went to work on a nearby farm where the activities continued, culminating in a barn burning down, along with another owned by a local lawyer. In time, Esther was arrested, but not for what you might expect. She was actually found guilty of stealing some clothes belonging to her employer, spent a month in jail, and the phenomenon ceased. She never faced charges for arson. Esther's ordeal, authentic or self-inflicted, may have faded into obscurity were it not for the efforts of a shady actor by the name of Walter Hubble. Seeing the escalation of the nature of events surrounding Esther, Hubble thought he could make a quick buck by taking the girl on tour, because that's what you do. I have opinions on this one.
Oh, very strong opinions.
Yeah. The half-baked scheme failed as audience members became hostile when they realized that the tour was nothing more than Esther sitting on stage while Hubble lectured about reported events. And that said, Hubble was not ready to give up. He turned to boarding at the Teeds house, and rushed out a best-selling book about her. Hubble's book went through a number of expansions, and its popularity means that our perceptions of what happened at the Amhurst are filtered through his account. You know they're exaggerating.
Just a smidge.
The first edition, published in 1879, was called The Haunted House, A True Ghost Story. The title page declares that it concerns the young girl who is possessed of devils and has become known throughout the entire Dominion as the Great Amhurst Mystery. I would put it right back on the shelf. The slim volume of fewer than 60 pages, and it's half over before we reach the mystery. The overwhelming impression is that a rather dull lifestyle ripe for the manufacture of a bit of excitement. Hubble expanded the book in 1888, altering the title to The Great Amhurst Mystery, a true narrative of the supernatural. In this, Hubble stressed that his theatrical experience left him immune to hypnotic or mesmeric influences, just in the case of the reader who wonders if Esther had pulled the wool over his eyes. Despite the book's increased length, the personal details of the family are abbreviated compared to the 1879 edition, and their domestic situation still comes across as monotonous, though. Hubble also changed his mind on the cause devils giving way to an evil ghost. He posts a theory that there are parallel worlds inhabited by the living and the dead. The parallel exists and suggests that we are as so much ghosts to those in the other realm as they are to us here. He has no doubt that the Amhurst events are genuine and states that Esther's system the Esther's system was in an abnormal state, subjecting her to the parallel world, hence her suffering. I'm trying very hard to keep my opinions to myself right now. Hubble was far from done. In 1916, after Esther's death, Hubble brought out a further expansion, the title page proclaiming the 10th edition and the 55th thousand. This was the same text as the 1888 edition, padded out with the correspondence and testimonies. Hubble must have made quite a bit of sum out of Esther, but she was described as living in poverty near later in life, suggesting she never saw any of the money from his bestsellers. Hubble's efforts and accounts begat further questions and analysis, and the scientific community would chime in with publications of their own, looking at the great Amhurst mystery through psychological and metaphysical lenses, and the result is one of the most perplexing and complex ordeals of Nova Scotia history to this day.
Quite messed up.
Yeah. I did find like a 500-page scientific study paper on this, and I was like, we're not touching that one. Not too much.
Yeah, Hubble was quite the character, and something that I did kind of admittedly wound up editing out of all this. It also doesn't seem to have helped that he may have had the hots for Esther's sister.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was
he was gross.
Skeezy.
He was gross.
He's a skeezy dude. Anyways.
Yeah.
But so Coda checked in.
Hey, Coda.
He said, "Yeah, can't wait to do another tour."
Yay.
Him and Savannah both.
Yay. With or without the sprinklers this time?
Well, as far as I know, that's the only tour that had sprinklers, such as they
I mean,
were.
there are some on the Capitol grounds. We just can always hit them when they go off.
This is true.
So they have been going while we've been there.
Yes, that is a good point. But Patrick said the whole thing that you're mine to kill is definitely out of line, but he is a little bit hypocritical on that point when it comes to spooky animals.
Yeah.
Spooky animal's going to be his undoing. He knows this. We know this.
So, Patrick, when are you moving into Polar Brothers? Because they have ghost cows. I'm just saying. You keep saying you want the ghost animals right down the street. We can be neighbors.
But yeah, he doesn't plan on leaving anytime soon. Good. But if I do, hopefully it will be by the hands of something like Joff the Talking Mongoose.
Nice.
That works.
Nice.
Yeah, I would be interested in meeting Jeff anyways. Oh, but anyway, so yes, I did mention he got his hopes up now.
I'm just saying.
Yes, they do seem to have.
Lee has reported them.
As soon as VCU starts hiring again.
Noted.
Keep your eyes open.
Yeah. I've been seeing a few things pop up.
Yep. So I did mention we were just going to briefly touch on Halifax tonight. Tonight's our next one is our one story from Halifax. It also kind of sets the stage just a little bit, if you will, a little bit of a teaser for what we will bring forth in 2 weeks' time when we do that episode completely focused on Halifax. So again, Halifax is Nova Scotia's largest city, and this is, again, remarkably haunted in its own right. And coming back to it in a couple weeks, and along with a deeper dive into the history of the Halifax explosion, which was a turning point of the city's history in the First World War. So I'll allude to this a little bit in this story.
But you'll get the full story next time.
Yep. A couple weeks' time, we'll take a deeper dive into exactly what happened with the Halifax explosion.
I had never actually heard about the explosion until Chris mentioned it, and then I started looking. I was like, oh, damn.
It's crazy.
It was bad.
Yeah. Yeah. So, the stop for tonight, this is going to be the Naval Museum of Halifax, formerly the Maritime Command Museum. And this is a Canadian Forces Museum located in the former official residence of the Commander-in-Chief of the North America Station, and it's right there in the heart of the city. It's also known as the Admiralty House. So Admiralty House served as the official summer residence of the admiral commanding the North American station of the British Royal Navy from 1819 to 1905. Construction of the large Palladian-style Georgian house overlooking the Halifax Naval Yard began in 1814, and when it was completed in 1819, it served as the summer residence of that commander-in-chief, with the squadron shifting its main base during the winter months from Halifax to the Royal Naval Dockyard in Bermuda. The first to live in the residence was Admiral David Milne. As the residence of one of the most important officials in Halifax, Admiralty House hosted many social and ceremonial events of the 19th century. In all, 36 admirals lived in the house, the last being Sir de Hort-Bosquenet.
That's a name.
I probably butchered it, but close enough. So anyways.
I'm just thinking the Sir de Hort.
Yeah, and Sir de Hort-Bosquenet. Bosenket. Whatever. Yeah, whatever. Admiralty House. Yes. God bless you. Admiralty House was taken over by the Canadian government in 1905 as Canada took responsibility for the Halifax dockyard from the British Royal Navy. In World War I, it served as a naval hospital. The roof of the building was blown off by the Halifax explosion on December 6th of 1917. Despite the damage, hospital staff, many of them injured themselves, treated many wounded in the house in the hours after the explosion. After repairs, the house was used as a clinic by the Massachusetts Halifax Relief Commission to assist survivors after the explosion. From 1925 to 1954, it became a part of the Royal Canadian Naval Base, and in 1961 it became the library for the Royal Canadian Navy. Admiralty House was officially opened as a museum on March 26th of 1974 and was declared a National Historic Site in 1978. The museum focuses on the history of the Canadian Navy along with the earlier history of the Halifax Dockyard. More than 30 rooms of exhibits are open to the public, as well as grounds which display weapons and equipment from the Canadian Navy. The collection consists of uniforms, model ships, medals, badges, ship's bells, and armaments, alongside a research library, archives, and a large photograph collection. They got a lot going on. The long history of the site has left it rife with haunting activity. Museum archivist Lisa McNiven says, "We've heard lots and lots of ghost stories. Sightings of a lady with white hair and the sound of water running are most likely connected to the story of Mary Gray, a servant who worked at Admiralty House in the mid-1800s. The story that has been passed down is that late at night, the lady of the house called for water. Mary was either the lady's maid or some other house servant, and she went upstairs to deliver the water, and then, well, she fell down the stairs on her way back. Mary Gray died that night in 1858, and although the inscription on her grave has eroded, museum staff say her gravestone is in the old cemetery. The old cemetery, the Royal Navy Burying Ground, tucked away at the lower part of the base. McNiven also recalled a daycare visiting the museum and one of the children asking why the lady in the mirror wasn't talking to him, as he gestured to a mirror in the front room. The child said she had long white hair and she was leaning out of the mirror looking at him, but she wasn't saying anything. A medium who visited the Naval Museum of Halifax,
There you go.
as part of a paranormal investigation team, estimated that there were as many as 14 spirits in the house.
And considering the number of relics they have there, I'm not surprised.
Yeah. McNiven has looked deep into the archives over the years, and she thinks she has an idea of who some of these spirits may be. One family that sticks out to her is the Lows, a husband and wife who lost 4 of their children in less than a week in late December 1884. According to McNiven, the father was the gardener and had been hired to keep the coal running in winter. 6-year-old William died on Christmas Day, followed by Alice, aged 4, on December 28th, and 3-year-old Samuel the following day. The youngest, Albert, died on December 31st at just 18 months. The cause of death is not confirmed, but cholera was running through the dockyard at the time, so that is the assumed cause. McNiven can only guess as to the mother's state of mind, but she believes that the trauma lingers on. Another incident involving a mother and child took place during the Halifax explosion. The mother was up in the attic holding her baby and looking out one of the top windows. She was likely looking down toward the harbor to see what all the commotion was about when the explosion happened and the window blew in, killing both she and the baby. Working alone in the house one day, McNab says she distinctly heard a door slam upstairs in the attic. It was loud, and the noise reverberated down to where she was working on the second floor. She stopped to listen, but it didn't happen again. The catch is that there are no doors in the attic. There are certainly different rooms with doorways, but no actual doors to slam. Other reports include a young cadet who said she saw a man down on the lower level wearing an old-time suit. Like the young boy who saw the woman in the mirror, the cadet asked why the man wouldn't come out and talk. Then there's the crypt. Formerly a coal storage area in the basement of the house, it has twice acted as a morgue. First in the mid to late 1800s when a magazine exploded and killed a number of people, and again following the Halifax explosion. McNab has heard reports of people hearing voices down there over the years. If you are ever in Halifax, be sure to stop by. The museum is a key to the city's past, and the employees are all too happy to share it with you, including a few of their ghost stories along the way.
Beverly's on.
Yeah, hi Beverly, and yeah, completely agree. Losing all those children right there
At Christmas time.
around the holiday, absolutely
Devastating and traumatic.
yeah. So I could not agree with you more about that. That's quite tragic. I will say, it made me think a little bit of the Shining, just in the sense that they were in the middle of Halifax, so they're not isolated like they were in The Shining, but this gardener was hired to basically live there and just keep the coal going so the place didn't freeze. Well, the Admiralty was down in Bermuda for the winter.
Yeah.
And so it kind of has that little bit of a, unfortunately, well, this did not have any kind of happy ending. Not that the ending of The Shining was exactly
happy either.
happy. I mean, anyways, I digress. It gave me some vibes when I was thinking about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely one of the more tragic stories to come from the heart of Halifax there.
Yeah.
And again, we will be talking much more about Halifax in 2 weeks.
Yes. All right, so off the northern coast of mainland Nova Scotia is the Northumberland Strait, and there is also an island called Pictou Island. This is a sparsely populated island with rich folklore, and it's the most well-known tale starts as many tales do. Once upon a time. Unfortunately, there's no happy ending fairy tale here. Here we have a young woman from Pictou Island falling in love with a sailor who has been passing through. They decided to get married, but before they could tie the knot, he and his shipmates sank in a storm. The inconsolable woman promptly hangs herself. The end. Kind of. Ever since, the woman has haunted the isle's lonely roads and beaches, sobbing and wailing in a long white gown. According to the Pictou Highland Heritage Society, while the White Lady is probably the best known ghost story in local folktale, her tale is not the only one. There's also the Phantom Ship of Northumberland Strait, which prowls the coastal waters, its sails and rigging silently ablaze in the early morning mist. Perhaps this is the ship that the White Lady's lost love went down on. Since 1978, there have been numerous accounts of people seeing a large schooner with 3 or 4 masts fully ablaze in the waters that separate Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, and New Brunswick. The sightings occur year-round, but most of them are documented around the fall. The ghost ship is said to have perceived a northeast wind and is the foretelling of a storm. Although the details vary from tale to tale, there are major commonalities. Some say they catch a glimpse of what looks like a large pirate ship on fire before it vanishes before their eyes, while others describe a detailed ship sailing at high speed along the strait before they lose sight of it. There are other accounts of sailors attempting rescue missions, taking on rowboats out to the blazing ship to search for survivals, only for the entire ship to disappear before they reach it. There have even been more detailed accounts from people who claim to have seen a ship with its crew on board, scrambling unsuccessfully to put out the fire. That's going to be really intense to see.
Mm-hmm.
As far as an explanation, depending on where the ship is sighted, some believe it is a pirate ship that was sunk by the British Navy, or it's the consequence of a drunken pirate brawl. Others believe it is to be one of many ships lost at sea. On Pictou Island, legend says that it's the ghost of the Melbury. Melbury.
Melbury.
Sailing.
It's a mouthful.
It's a ship that sailed out of Quebec bound for Scotland, and it became shipwrecked near Roy Island off the coast of Nova Scotia in 1890. You would not be blamed if these stories sound familiar. There are versions of the White Lady and the Phantom Ship stories just about everywhere you go in the Atlantic region. Nova Scotia and author Vernon Oikel.
Yeah, Oikel.
Known for his best-selling books about the maritime ghosts and hauntings, notes that this phenomenon, saying sometimes our ladies are white, in white or blue, like the one in Peggy's Cove. She could be a namesake for Peggy of the Cove, or just somebody else who lost her life out there. His point is that not so much the story behind any given phenomenon on the Canadian East Coast, it's who's telling it and what they believe. There's a lot more narrative diversity about unexplained phenomenon in this corner of the world than in some imagine. He, for one, imagines quite a bit. O'Connell notes that I talk to people who report things, unusual things, happening in their homes or places of business. People meeting other people on the steps, but who aren't actually there. Items like hairbrushes go missing for days at a time before they suddenly turn up. And paranormal experiences are all over the place. Take, for example, the sudden appearance of a black dog, which would have been considered a colossally bad news even in life. Its ghostly variant almost certainly means a pack of hellhounds is on your trail. For some reason, the Atlantic provinces are full of them. Oikel has heard their tales many times over, noting, I've heard plenty of stories of black dogs over the years. They are there for a second as a precursor of impending tragedy, and then they're gone. On the other hand, there have been reports of a black dog walking down the roads in Tancook Island, just looking around for a former owner who's passed away. In paranormal circles, black dogs belong to a class of ghostly phenomenon that's known as forerunners. Often these shadowy human-like figures who suddenly appear to convey an important, unsettling news about the near future for someone. For Oikel, the forerunner lore is so rich in the Atlantic Canada that he's published a book about it in 2023 called Forerunners, the Harbingers of Death in Nova Scotia. It says spotting a forerunner can be fast, it can leave you shocked. People will see a forerunner and they don't even know it. Most of the time you can't even see their faces, you can't distinguish who the person is or the animal necessarily. In this corner of the world where ancient cultures have merged for centuries, tales will often have similar tones through different lenses. Whether we're talking about a lady in white or a black dog, the folklore is rich and fascinating, and the tales from Pictou Island are a prime example of the culture and the paranormal coming together.
Mm-hmm.
We got to see if we can find some of his books.
They are all over Amazon.
Okay, we'll just need to pre-order them.
Yep.
And read up.
Yep. So, and I did, just in case we butchered his name and you couldn't figure out how to spell it, I did drop his name in the chat. It's Vernon, and his last name Oikel. Sorry, definitely butchering it one way or another. It's spelled Oickle. So, anyways, but yeah, so you need to check out some of this stuff. Now, talking about the cultural roots of Nova Scotia, very, very heavy dose of Scottish.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of Scottish individuals settled in Nova Scotia.
Yes.
So, very heavy influence from the Scots. Of course, there are
Alexander Graham Bell did.
Yes.
So.
Yep. But yeah, so there are some others as well, which we'll touch on here in just a second. And Beverly's A big black dog bumped into my car so hard it knocked a bit of the trim off once.
Oh my.
I'd say that was it was certainly foretelling something. That must have been a big dog. And Patrick wants to pet the black dog.
Of course.
As you do. I mean, who doesn't like a doggy?
I go through. I love them.
Yeah, exactly. Aside from the Scottish culture that they have there, they do have some French as well. Now, of course, Quebec is very, very deeply associated with French in general. But there were some French hanging around in the Nova Scotia region back in the day as well. So here we're going to the northeastern end of the province where we have Cape Breton Island, the largest and most populous island in Nova Scotia. Cape Breton Island is like a mini Scotland with rolling hills and deep Gaelic cultural roots and traditions. Scottish settlers migrated to Cape Breton Island in the 18th and 19th centuries, bringing music, dance, storytelling, and language. Today, Cape Breton Island is one of the last places in North America where Scottish and Gaelic is still spoken. Ta-da! Now, Cape Breton Island is rich with eerie folklore and ghost stories, not just at the fortress of Louisbourg. There's a place called the Ferry Hole Cape. Oh, that was kind of... We're going to be talking about the fortress of Louisbourg, so we'll come back to that. My editing was left a bit to be desired this week. So, other than Fortress of Louisbourg, there's a place called the Ferry Hole Cave that's known for strange whispers and mysterious lights, believed to be the work of spirits or fairies. Another peculiar tale comes from the Louisbourg Playhouse, built for a 1967 film which has a haunted reputation with reports of unexplained noises and ghostly sightings in period costumes. Nearby Oak Island,
which you may have heard about because of a TV series.
Very infamous for its cursed treasure pit, surrounded by deadly traps and fatal accidents. And then in the Cape Breton Highlands National Park, the Lone Shilling, a Scottish-style hut, is enveloped in an intense, unsettling silence, rumored to be haunted by the spirits of early settlers. And on the southeastern tip of Cape Breton Island, you'll find the Fortress of Louisbourg, which has its own ghostly tales.
Which point?
Here we go. Now, Louisbourg started as a French settlement in 1713 and quickly became a fishing port, then a commercial port and fortress. By 1720, the walls of the Fortress of Louisbourg were constructed. The Fortress of Louisbourg, named to honor King Louis XIV, reflected his era's focus on strengthening French maritime power and colonial expansion. The fortress was a linchpin during the struggle to control the area as part of a larger invasion and European colonization of the Americas. Excuse me. French forces were in intermittent battles with the Wabanaki Confederacy, creating an unstable base for French expansion. In the early 18th century, the Wabanaki Confederacy, comprised of several local tribes, was actively engaged in protecting their ancestral lands and cultural autonomy. Wabanaki means people of the dawn, reflecting the Confederacy's location in the easternmost part of North America. They faced challenges from European colonial expansion, particularly from the British, and frequently allied with the French to resist British encroachments. The Confederacy played a strategic role in the colonial conflicts of the era, using diplomacy and warfare to navigate the pressures of European colonization. There has been a revival of the Wabanaki Confederacy in recent years, driven by a renewed interest in indigenous sovereignty and cultural preservation. This resurgence has included revitalizing traditional customs, languages, and ceremonies, and strengthening intertribal relationships across the member nations. While the Fortress of Louisbourg started with the French, the British had their eyes on it from the beginning. Seizing control of the fortress was a major component of a British strategy to weaken France's colonial empire so that the British could claim control of North America. So in 1745, British forces besieged Louisbourg. The British won and took control, but then handed it back to the French only 3 years later as a part of the Treaty of Aix-la-Chapelle, ending the War of Austrian Succession. It was a strategic diplomatic move, trading Louisbourg for territorial gains elsewhere, particularly in India, and aiming to maintain the balance of power in Europe. The return was unpopular amongst British colonists, but considered necessary by the British government for broader international objectives. In 1756, we're only talking not even a decade later, the 7 Years' War started due to escalating territorial and power conflicts between major European powers, especially, the British and the French, over colonial possessions and trade dominance in North America and elsewhere. So in 1758, the British again besieged the fortress of Louisbourg, and the French surrendered after 6 weeks, putting the area back into the hands of the British again. After recapturing the fortress of Louisbourg in 1758, the British decided that the best way to prevent French comeback was to simply tear the place down.
As you do.
By 1760, they methodically demolished the fortress, effectively snuffing out its role as a pesky French stronghold. This cemented British control over the region and ensured the French couldn't use their favorite North American fortress as a base in future skirmishes. This move was a part of the British strategy to limit French influence in North America. Current estimates indicate that during the first siege of Louisbourg in 1745, around 500 British and colonial forces and approximately 300 French troops were killed or wounded. In the second siege in 1758, British casualties numbered about 172 killed and over 300 wounded, with French casualties likely much higher. So, in a relatively short span, the fierce battles at and around the small area of the fortress of Louisbourg resulted in well over 1,000 casualties. The fortress of Louisbourg was reconstructed in the 1960s, timed with Canada's centennial celebrations to strengthen national identity and historical awareness. This major preservation project highlighted the fortress's historical importance as a critical military and commercial post in the 18th century North America, involved in the colonial struggles between France and Britain. The reconstructed fortress of Louisbourg stands as a National Historic Site where history buffs can explore the restored bastions and barracks as a stepping back into the 18th century. With such a turbulent history of violence and death, it's no wonder that people report seeing ghosts there, particularly because the living keep doing reenactments there. The whole area in and around the fortress of Louisbourg is packed with ghost sightings. One of the most well-known is the spirit of a French soldier who patrols the grounds near the King's Bastion. Visitors and staff alike have reported seeing him, and he's often described as sorrowful, with weathered uniform marked with signs of battle. Some say he's easier to spot on foggy nights. Another frequently reported sighting is that of a white lady, a spectral figure that walks along the ramparts, often at dusk. According to some, she was the wife of an officer who died at the fortress, and she is still searching for her husband. Some reports have said there was a sudden temperature drop around her, and that occasionally a wailing can be heard. There have also been sightings of a ghostly nurse exhibiting the same behavior, so it's unclear if these two are separate entities. Nearby stands the Louisbourg Lighthouse. Built in 1734, it's still operational, making it the oldest operational lighthouse in North America. There have been sightings of a lighthouse keeper who sometimes walks a path outside carrying a ghostly lantern. And on stormy nights, an unsettling moaning can be heard above the rain, thunder, and crashing waves. Interestingly, in 1736, the lantern in the lighthouse was destroyed by a fire, but the stone tower remained unscathed. Then, in 1758, the lighthouse was severely damaged during one of the sieges of Louisbourg by the British and left abandoned. In 1842, a second lighthouse was built, but it was destroyed by a fire in 1922. A third lighthouse was built a year later, which is the one that stands there today. That's plenty of historical opportunities for a lighthouse keeper's ghost to take up residence. Back in the fortress, there are tales of a young drummer boy who was killed during one of the sieges, and that his ghost sometimes still drums during the night. Some visitors and staff have also said they've heard a baby crying in the middle of the night, only to find nothing when they go exploring. And, possibly related to the White Lady, there have been reports of a woman in a long flowing dress seen in the windows of officers' quarters, and some say that she was one of the many victims of a devastating outbreak of disease. This ghost, though, is said to leave behind the scent of floral perfume in places she's been seen. Most ghostly sighting reports seem rather innocuous, except for a troublesome spirit lingering in the bakery. It's said to throw objects at people, sometimes shoving them, and occasionally move around large machinery. One theory of hauntings claims that when people are buried in unmarked graves or graves are disturbed, it wakes up the dead. Turns out that there's an old cemetery near the fortress of Louisbourg that dates back to the 18th century. Supposedly, many of the casualties from the sieges were buried in unmarked graves there. Over time, erosion started washing away their remains. In 2017, anthropology students from the University of New Brunswick, along with Parks Canada, began efforts to dig up approximately 1,000 coastal graves and relocate them before washed into the Atlantic Ocean. Brutal sieges, over 1,000 dead, fires, demolition, unmarked graves, and exhumations, period reenactments, all maybe perhaps make for the perfect recipe for paranormal activity.
This is going to be a fun trip.
We're looking forward to it.
Yes. I saw Patrick posted quite a few links.
Yep. Cape Breton Island, Fortress of Louisbourg, and I think that's one of the books from Vernon.
Ah.
Yes, and yeah, Beverly, a lot of lighthouses are haunted. We did a haunted lighthouse episode.
We did too.
We may have done two. Let me see.
Chris is going to look at the list.
I know that we've done at least one.
We've done at least one. I know I have a second one started, if not a third. I thought we might have done two. Anyway, while Chris is looking that up, we're going to go to our final stop, which is the Ghosts of McNab's Island.
Sorry, we did three. So we did lighthouses and ships on March 23rd of 2020. We did lighthouses, I guess we just did lighthouses part 2, on July 8th of 2024. So tomorrow will be the 1-year anniversary since we did that. And then on August 26th of 2024, we did Haunted Great Lake lighthouses. So,
and I'm sure I have another document started.
Yeah, so we've talked about a lot of lighthouses.
Because we love our lighthouses. I am.
There's 2 more lighthouse scripts that are started that we will get to at a later date.
Yeah, I'm a lighthouse fiend.
Yep, but all of those episodes on our YouTube channel.
Yep.
I can go ahead and. Beverly will look it up. I'll see if I can actually find the links and drop them in the chat while I'm at it. While you're talking.
All right, so McNab Island is at the entrance to Halifax Harbor. It's provided a significant and historic backdrop to the lives of Halifax residents for over 2 centuries. Its strategic location was utilized, of course, by the military to guard the harbor, and the fertile soil provided an important source of food for early settlers. The beaches, the woodlands, the open fields, and scenery have attracted the local residents since the 1700s. A 5,000-year-old shell maiden, meaning a refuge heap.
Issues?
Yes, trash heap. There we go. Is evidence of a pre-European contact use of McNab's Island. In the 1690s, the French used the island for a fishing center and planned to build a fortress similar to Louisbourg on McNab, but in 1713, mainland Nova Scotia ceded to the British and the French built Fortress Louisbourg on Cape Breton Island instead. When Edward Cornwallis established British settlement in Halifax in 1749, he granted most of McNab's Island to his nephews. In 1780, Margar Beach was used as a military gibbet. Delinquent soldiers were brought here to be executed at the gallows, and their bodies were left to hang as a warning to other soldiers who would maybe rethink the idea of mutiny or desertion. Peter McNab purchased the island in 1782. His descendants resided there up until 1935. He was living on the island when Margar Beach was home to the giblets, and there's an account that he often was annoyed at night because he found himself unable to sleep. The cause of the annoyance was the sound of the chains holding up the corpses in the gallows. They would clang so loudly that they could be heard across the island. One night he was so angered by the constant clanging that he and a group of men went to the side of the giblets, tore down the corpses and the gallows with their bare hands. I mean, you got to be pretty ticked off to go against the military like that.
Yep. And sorry, side note, unfortunately, it appears our live video from the lighthouses and ships was gone.
Oh no.
Yeah, so our oldest one that we have on here was the episode we aired for Haunted Highways on April 6th of 2020.
Oh no.
Our March 2020 episodes are
Not there.
not there. Although those were, the lighthouses and ships, I think, was the second one that we ever did.
Yeah.
We may have filmed that in portrait.
Which doesn't transfer to.
Yeah, which would not have transferred nicely, so that might have been why that one was lost. We still got the script. We could go back and actually just do the live and reread the script.
We
in
could.
theory.
In theory.
In theory. But sorry, I digress.
Or just record it and post it on YouTube.
That
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
All right.
In the meantime, there's 2 other lighthouse episodes to chew on. So yes, they tore down the corpses and gallows with their bare hands.
Yes. Beginning in
the 1860s, the British Admiralty bought large parcels of land from the McNab family and established Ives Point Battery, Fort McNab, and Huguenot Battery to better defend Halifax. In 1866, an English steamship, the SS England, was ordered to anchor off the mainland in the Cove of McNab's Island because the ship's crew and passengers had been overtaken by a cholera outbreak. It was a nasty business, and they were confined to the ship and island until it passed. It was detailed in Dr. John Slater's report that the illness was fast and brutal. The body would purge, and within 12 hours, a person could be dead. Over 800 infected or assumed cholera carriers were left on the island to wander about. There were tents set up, and passengers and crew who had friends grouped together to monopolize the food that was delivered intermittently from the mainland. The strong would prevail, and the weak were left to die of starvation if the cholera didn't take them first. No official documentation was kept, but it is estimated that approximately 200 bodies were buried in 2 mass graves on the island. The bodies that were buried at Little Thrum Cap have since washed out to sea, but the unmarked graves at Huguenot Point are still there, concealed by underbrush. In 1906, A.J. Davis bought an old fairground that was set up on the island, but did not attract enough attendees to be profitable. He tried to revamp it by rebuilding the merry-go-round and adding more games, but it still failed. He built a soda factory in a barn near the house, and by 1908, he was producing flavorful carbonated beverages in glass bottles. He made a special brew called Pure McNab's that was produced in neat ceramic bottles. He supplied people who would frequent the fairgrounds and attended parties that he threw at his dance hall until he eventually stopped in 1915. Despite his efforts to revitalize the fairground, it never took off. In 1919, the bottle storage cottage burned down, entombing hundreds of glass and ceramic bottles. Bootleggers used the old plant to run moonshine during the years of Prohibition in the 1920s, and in more recent years, bottle collectors would go out digging for these vintage bottles. During World War I and World War II, the island was largely under military control. The island played a key role in controlling access to Halifax Harbor. Searchlights on McNab's Island patrolled the harbor, and submarine nets were laid between the island and mainland. In the 1960s, the military transferred most of their holdings on McNab's Point to Parks Canada for use as parkland. Then in 1983, the province assumed responsibility for assembling a park on the Halifax Harbor Islands. In 2000, Parks Canada transferred all but Fort McNab National Historic Site of Canada to the province for park purposes. Today, less than 1% of McNab's Island is privately owned. Several stories have come from the workers for the water taxis and other boat tours out of the harbor. One summer worker described joining the captain of the McNab's water taxi and going along for the ride to drop off and pick up passengers who had braved an overnight visit to the island. The ultra-brave would pack their camping gear and take the taxi out to the island, knowing there would be no way home until the boat returned at 8 a.m. to pick them up. On the mornings, I would accompany the captain to pick up the overnight guests. They would always board the ship hurriedly, grateful to be off the island. I heard firsthand accounts of people experiencing the oppressive feeling of being watched, of feeling isolated, but not alone. One man told me he swears he saw a man standing outside his tent, but when he opened the flap to investigate, there was no one there. There have been many accounts of people seeing the ghost of a man or a ghostly horse and carriage. The lighthouse keeper claims to have woken up one night to the ghost of his mother by the side of his bed. He claims that she grabbed his arms and tried to pull him. With such a winding, complex, and sometimes gruesome past, few wonder at the haunting activity of McNab Island, and fewer still try to brave its shores in the quiet hours of the night. Dun, dun, dun. So,
Checking on the comments.
yes. Patrick says our 2020 episode saved his sanity. We tried.
That might have been when we were still doing the podcast, though.
No, it was Facebook Live.
That was Facebook Live?
Yeah,
Okay.
because the very, very first one we did was for like St. Patrick's Day.
Okay.
We did Facebook Live. I know we sat right in front of the fireplace. We wound up doing it in profile view. It was janky as all get out because we had no clue.
Yeah, we were still figuring it out.
Had no clue what we were doing. I don't think we did the Lighthouses episode the following week because we were doing it every Monday because you had nothing to do.
Yeah, and I had time to research.
Yep. And still hadn't figured out exactly the best way to video. And then, lo and behold, it was that Haunted Highways one where we finally got a good idea as to how to actually orient the video and whatnot.
Third time's the charm.
Third time's the charm. But we should get back into doing them on the couch upstairs. It's a better
Yeah, it's a better setup, but we
Better
need to
actually make some room.
we need to make some room up there. That room has become a catch-all, and it needs to be fixed.
Oh, no, it saved my insanity. I was super close to becoming sane at one point. That would have been tragic.
Gotcha. Yeah, sane's not fun. Insanity is so much better.
And Dana says, do episodes on Maine City. We did do
We did one on
Mount Desert Island,
yes,
which is where Acadia National Park is in Bar Harbor. So I
think I did a Maine one as well. Let me check my list.
I don't think we've done Haunted Maine yet. Not as a.
I have the list right there. Oh wait, no, I'm lying. I am lying. I'm so sorry.
I thought I would have remembered that.
Okay, so maybe I'll kick off with Haunted Maine next. Yeah, that's right there. Second one on my states we have not done yet.
Okay.
I do have a list, folks, of ones we have not actually covered yet for the states, so they will begin to get checked off.
Well, Patrick might have just beat me to it, the link for the Mount Desert Island. But anyways, yeah, so if you want stories from Maine, there you go. And we do have to actually cover Maine as a standalone state still at some point. So, but yeah, so that was our haunted ghosts of haunted Halifax.
Nope, Nova Scotia.
Oh, good Lord.
Haunted Halifax is
in
next.
2 weeks. 2 weeks we'll be back with Halifax. This was Nova Scotia.
This was Nova Scotia. With one stop in Halifax. We brought you back to Halifax, so we're ready to start off for there next time.
Yes.
And then after that, we're going to be doing Southampton. Haunted Southampton, England.
Yes.
So
we're making the international tour, if you will, of late, because we have done quite a bit of international ones recently.
yes, well, it helps that we are traveling internationally coming up, and so we're pre-doing our research. There's a method to this madness here, but then we will get back to states.
Yes. But anyways, so other than that,
Friday, Chris and I are going to be up at Hanover Tavern for Spirits with the Spirits at the tavern. I will be one of the spirits that you're drinking with. Chris is going to be one of the guides taking you around to the drinks. So that'll be a lot of fun.
Yep. So tickets for that are at hanovertavern.org if you are interested in joining us up there for that event.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll be a lot of fun. And
of course, tours are going.
Tours are going. We got nightly availability. And
We have a John Marshall coming up.
we do have a John Marshall coming up. Last one we have on the calendar for now. It'll be July 25th. So 2 weeks from Friday.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 2 weeks from Friday. So I think that's sounds about right. So, anyways, but yes, so we'll be back with you before that. Oh, and Alex, hi, Alex.
Made it, but Alex should be able to catch it on YouTube once we upload it there.
So yes, it'll be on the YouTube channel, and it'll be on Facebook here for roughly a month because of
new rules.
Facebook's new rules about live video storage. They now dump all of these after a month.
Yep.
So
everything previous we put on the YouTube for a reason.
Yep. And thank you for sharing the link to that Spirits with Spirits event, Patrick. But yeah, Alex, glad you could chime in here at least for a minute. If you have any questions, always drop us a line. Happy to hear from happy to hear from Alex, happy to hear from Patrick, happy to hear from everybody. Yes. So drop us a note anytime. Always happy to chat about the spooky stuff. And come on out and see us on a tour sometime.
Mm-hmm.
So, with that,
We'll say good night. Stay safe, especially with this heat that's coming in.
Yeah, gonna be a little toasty tomorrow, so keep cool tomorrow.
We will see you all later.
Sorry, words are getting tough for me this evening.
They are. We're going on vacation shortly, and our brains have already checked out.
Yeah. Yes is the word I'm looking for. All right. Well, anyways, y'all be well, be safe, be spooky. We'll talk to you again soon.
Bye, y'all.